she was very unassuming, very quiet, and she'd sit down and she'd smile and shake hands politely, and she would turn absolute killer in front of you on a chessboard. For some reason, it switches on a part of your brain that allows you to do these things in maths.
You're listening to Around the School Table, hosted by me, Steve Davis, and proudly powered by Xuno Suite. We'll be bringing together the many voices shaping primary and secondary education across Australia, from principals and teachers to education thought leaders and system innovators. Whether you're in the classroom, the staff room, or the boardroom, this is your podcast to be informed, inspired, and connected. Today's guest on Around the School Table has proven that when it comes to nurturing excellence, it's not your opening budget that matters, but your end game strategy. Craig Ainsworth from Westport Public School has built a chess program that regularly pulls off the educational equivalent of a Sicilian defence, surprising competitors from schools across all socio-economic backgrounds. And what makes this story worth talking about? Well, while Craig sits in what bureaucrats classify as a low socio-economic area, Craig's students have maintained an 18-year winning streak by developing that rarest of combinations: intellectual rigour, emotional resilience, and creative problem-solving. So let's discover now how sometimes in education the most powerful moves come from the pieces you might otherwise overlook. Craig Ainsworth, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Steve. I've been looking forward to the discussion for a long time.
Who knows how it's going to end? Who will get to say check?
Well, hopefully that's me, Steve. I like to win.
Well, that will come through, I think. Now, your school, Craig, Westport Public, it's located in Port Macquarie in New South Wales.
Yes.
What's most remarkable is that while it's technically in a low socioeconomic region, when it comes to chess, you're at the equal footing with some of the biggest and most financially supported schools in the mid-North Coast and Sydney, like Scots College. Am I right to find that intriguing?
Well, absolutely, and I mean, I've often sat around a staff room table, but I must say that that this now is 5 years on since we finished. That when we won our last state title and our last North Coast title, kids have moved on, of course. But yeah, look, if I had said to you that I'm taking the Port Macquarie Sharks, for example, down to play in an NRL game against the Penrith Panthers, what are the odds of them competing on an equal footing? You'd be laughed at. So really, quite often we'd walk into rooms where the room would go dead quiet, and the air would go out of the place, and people would say, "Westport here." It just seemed we developed this persona of excellence that became something that was just known and expected. And I think probably the big thing here is that if you expect things from kids, if you expect things from your students that are bigger and you give them something to aspire to, they will often rise beyond what you think they can do.
Wow. I know we're doing this for educators and people in school management, but as a parent listening to that, I'll take that challenge on, because it obviously applies at home as well. Mm. In this interview, we're going to be talking about how to develop and support gifted, high-performance students. Specifically, we'll be talking about how chess has been critical in that. So I want to get into it. There's physical, social and emotional, intellectual and creative. These are all the attributes, and I want to break down each one at a time.
Yep.
So if I understand this correctly, by physical, this aspect is in relation to the fine motor movement involved in chess. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's also that control, that physical control of self too, because to be able to think and be able to perform under pressure, you've got to be able to control breathing. If you can't control breathing, you can't control thinking, your head gets scrambled and you can't perform critical and creative thinking. So when we're talking about those domains, the physical, the social, emotional, the intellectual and the creative, they're all markers of high performance, gifted and talented students that we in education look for. And certainly in the New South Wales Department, where we're actively trying to promote in public education. Sitting down at a chessboard over the course of 8 rounds, that may start at 9 o'clock and finish at 2. If you're playing competitively and if you're watching coaching, you're spent. You are absolutely physically spent, just because of the stresses and the decision making that goes into playing a game at the highest level, which for us was at state level. We did go to a national tournament twice. And just to compete at that level, so people will say, "Oh, you're sitting and playing." At the highest level, you're not.
Oh.
You may get up out of your seat. You may go for a walk over and get a drink. You might even go around behind your opponent and check out the other side of the board from there. You are allowed to do that in competitive chess, and to be able to control your emotions, control your physical. Your physical wellness to compete at the highest level over the course of 8 rounds, that's something that I found that it takes an awful lot out of you by the end of the day. You've got to be physically fit and emotionally ready and intellectually ready to be able to take on a challenge like this. And this is where the kids just kept surprising me. I'd keep lifting the bar. I'd keep putting them in situations where I'd say, I need you to perform what we've trained to do, with the pressure getting higher and higher. They mightn't have known that pressure was there. They may well have. But they never complained about it. They always took that challenge on, physically, emotionally, and intellectually.
And just to be clear, at that high level, when you're allowed to move behind your opponent, you're not allowed to make physical contact with them.
We wouldn't do that. But there's a certain amount of proximity that can do wonders to get in people's head.
I was really coming at this expecting us to be talking about the fine motor skills, etc. But you're right with the breathing. I've just been reading Jefferson Fisher's book called The Next Conversation. He's a lawyer from America, very gifted in conversation. He talks about that importance of breathing that defence personnel learn. And you've just really made the case that we need to be mindful of this in raising this with ourselves and our students.
And even this goes the skills the skills that these kids are learning on chessboards goes beyond 64 squares. Even to our educational leadership, that ability to if you're going into a tough conversation or a tough meeting or a tough day, that ability to physically control your emotion, because the reaction's a physical one as well. It's a physical reaction to pressure, the environment, what's on, and you have to be able to control that in order to get the best out of yourself and the people around you as well.
Let's move on to emotional intelligence, because that's important for developing minds. This links to social and emotional in that list I read out before. And that comes down to dealing with a loss, whether that's just a piece or the entire game.
Oh, absolutely.
Tease out the lessons that are there on the board for us.
I think in our modern world, we like kids to be successful all the time. We want them to be happy, and that's great. But the reality of life is that we need to deal with both the highs of great success and the lows of defeat. And I quote Rudyard Kipling's poem, If we can just get people to see that those highs and lows are really the same beast. And it's the process that goes in behind the decision-making, the training, the work, that decision-making process that I teach kids to play with, that's where the real victory is, that ability to apply a process consistently under all kinds of pressure. Be that your opponent's all over you and you're about to lose, or be that you are in a position where that is really tight, you could win. But being able to apply a process over and over and over to just get the best result in that moment.
So what's the dynamic that allows you to teach that? Is the fact that you bring your focus back to the board, back to the board, back to the board, and you're sort of picking up those skills by default?
Okay, we go back to the basics. So I get a beginner in front of me. We will start with King, Queen, Rook, and I will and I introduce. It's well known. It's not new. I haven't made it up. It's called KM-PPS. King safety. K for king safety. Material. Are you up or down? KM. P, pawn structure. How are your pieces positioned? So we've got K, M, P, P, S. The last bit is space. How much space do you control? So at the head of it is king safety. So I'm saying to these people, when you're under pressure, you've got to revert back to a process. And that process is to follow those questions in your head. Is my king safe? Am I up or down on material? How can I change that? What can I do about it? What's my position look like? Can I improve it? Those questions you run through. And quite often I'd say to kids, okay, you've made a mistake. Where was the mistake made in the process? So it's not about the result anymore. It's about the process in front of you.
KM-PPS. All right. I need a T-shirt with that on it.
Yeah, I'm sure there is one because it's not mine. I got that off somewhere else.
But how good to be able to use that as a tool within this educational environment and through chess. Wow. To move to the next attribute now, which is the intellectual aspect of things,
yes,
especially the things you pick up through chess. It's probably widely understood. There's a white paper from the University of Sydney that goes into a great lot of details about chess linked to strength and numerical and verbal aptitudes, etc. But before I get you to unleash on this, I want to quote you back to yourself.
This might be interesting.
Because we often think of giftedness as something innate.
Yes.
Chess seems to challenge that. You said, and I quote, chess teaches us that intelligence is not something you're born with, it's about effort.
Yes.
That is a bold statement, especially in the realm of gifted and high performance, students, etc. What is it about chess that can unveil or nurture those so-called hidden talents that students might have, but which might not be surfaced yet?
I think that it has that ability to put a problem in front of you, to give yourself a process and be able to solve a problem, first of all, in a non-pressure environment. Quite often in classrooms, we're asking kids to solve things, give me an answer now. The real world, in terms of the business world, is you've got a problem, I need you to solve it, give me multiple answers. Give me multiple ways to do it. So I'm saying to these kids, give me multiple answers. I want you to list them, and I want you to start pruning off or wiping out on your whiteboard the ones that are completely ridiculous. Now let's start to look at the ones that work. Now let's look at what's best. And when we talk about intellectual, we start to then look at critical and creative thinking. Critical and creative thinking is something that we all have. And there are studies that say that the kids at a very young age are born creative. They see opportunities. And there's also a school of thought that modern education sometimes takes that out of them.
Yep.
So the ability from chess to say that this is a possibility, is it any good? What do you think? What happens if I do that? What are you going to get back? Oh, yeah, that's not going to work, is it? This one looks good. Let's have a think. I do that, what happens to me coming back? So we're starting to now think intellectually. If we're thinking about problem solvers in mathematics, problem solvers in the business world, linking back through that social and emotional, how am I dealing with my friends on a stressful day? If I say that to my friend, what am I going to get back? And part of what was absolutely unbelievable in what I was doing here is, yes, kids' mathematical achievements came up. Their ability to think and write appeared because all of a sudden there's these options. I can use that. That doesn't work. I'll use something else. So we had a direct correlation between academic performance, not just in maths, but in literacy as well, through that creative and critical thinking abilities and that processing that just happened. And I find it hard to say as well, because I'm not a chess player from way back. I'm not. I'm a golfer, I'm a cricketer. I played soccer. So I'm one of those kids who are outside running around kicking a ball. And the interesting thing with the kids who did really well within my chess program over all those years is they weren't the kids who you'd suspect were chess players. These were your sporty kids. These were your kids who were underestimated. One example is there was a girl played for us, and she was very unassuming, very quiet, and she'd sit down and she'd smile and shake hands politely, and she would turn absolute killer in front of you on a chessboard. And it was just that she had this belief. She'd trained in a system, and she had put that much time into creative and critical thinking processes that then if for some reason it switches on a part of your brain that allows you to do these things in maths. And I found that through coaching chess, I had to get better. These kids I'm not losing to these kids because if I do, how do I coach them? How do they get better if they're looking at me going, well, I've surpassed you, old man. So I had to get better, but through that, my mathematical skills got better. My ability to solve a problem got quicker, and so did theirs. So there is real evidence there that it does change the way your brain puts your thought patterns together and the way you see the world.
Good morning.
Selamat pagi.
早安.
Suprabhat.
Kalimera.
Buongiorno.
Magandang umaga.
좋은 아침이에요. Want to make sure every parent feels connected and informed, no matter what language they speak? Communication just got easier. With Xuno's multi-language feature, you can now connect with parents in over 130 languages. Automatically translated, instantly understood. Whether it's reminders, updates, or celebrations. Families receive your message in their preferred language, with no extra steps from you, no confusion, just clear communication. Every time. Try it today to build stronger school-to-home partnerships, inclusive, effortless, and effective.
You certainly are a powerful advocate for bringing this onto the table. I must say that depersonalising the before with having a process. It's not me. I don't have to. It's a process.
Absolutely.
And here, what you've tapped on in bringing those last two things together, the intellectual aspect and the critical thinking, is there's more than one end game.
Absolutely.
Also loosens that connection that would bring us down and cost us with self-esteem and confidence.
Yep.
You really have got me wrapped around your finger. I want all students exposed to this now already, and we're only halfway through the chat.
Well, this is the interesting thing here is like I'm a golfer. Like I'm playing A grade golf. The lowest I got to was 6, and the last few years, just from watching and reading, I've realised that this is not a chess book. This is not an idea that's just chess. You take the best golfers in the world. They're not thinking about their score at the end of the day. They're not saying that my personality is related to my performance or my result. My success is related to my ability to put into process this that I've learnt in the here and now. No, there is no past, there is no future. It's just the here, the now, and what I can do in the here and now.
Okay. Interesting choice of sports, because the other two you play, I think, are much more akin, like soccer and test cricket.
Not test cricket, just cricket.
That's chess played on an oval.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a different conversation. So, look, that winning streak you had of 18 years in a row, that was phenomenal. It says a lot about the culture that you helped build at Westport Public. What strategies did you have in place for building that expertise, or did it happen organically?
We had a very interesting way of going about an interesting way that developed and then took on a life of its own. Early on, when we first started it, I started because I had a group of very confident boys who were probably you taking up too much classroom space. Anyway, they challenged me to a game. Well, I won, and they went, didn't like it. And I said, well, how do you get better on? Anyway, so we continued on. But what eventually happened is we had successful teams that started mentoring and apprenticing people further down the line. So if I could use the analogy of shark's teeth, we didn't have just our elite squad. We had an A, B, C, D, E, and a beginners group. So for those 18 years, I didn't see a lunch or a recess.
Wow.
I would be training my elite group for whatever they were going to. The elite group would then apprentice the Bs. The Bs would apprentice the Cs, and so on and so forth. And kids would come in, and I would have maybe 6 different boards going with different problems or something else. It's like throwing balls up in the air and saying, right. So there was all a plan here. The new kids had to work on their end game, because we always start with end game first. It's the easiest way to teach KM-PPS processing. The A's and B's were working on strategy and tactics, because there's a difference. We were working on strategy and tactics and that elite level competition. Then we would apprentice all the way through. So when my elite team won and they moved on, that could be the end of the whole thing. But that B side coming through then had all the skills that A side had. It only ever really broke down, of course, when and it broke down in 2018 was probably the end of it. I went off to a different job then, and moved on. I'm back at Westport now. It only really broke down because I wasn't there really to facilitate it anymore. And all good things. I mean, you look at St George Football Club back when they won there so many in a row. My dad tells me how many, but I can't remember, but it was heaps. And he said there's a book. It'll never be done again. It's probably never been done before. It'll never be done again. But that's the kind of that's what happened. It was that very much that culture of mentoring all the way down the line through to the beginners.
So while you were there as a catalyst to make sure that mentoring and that apprenticeship approach was going, it itself was self-propagating.
Oh, yes.
This sense of culture.
Very much so. And success breeds success. People saw where these kids went. We would at some point drive to, we might drive to Coffs Harbour 2 hours away. We might go to the North Coast. We might go inland towards Armidale and play. We'd be in Newcastle or Sydney or Melbourne for nationals as we were. And I think the culture not just went outside of our group and into the rest who went, hey, number one, these kids are getting time off school. Number two, they're bringing back some pretty interesting silverware. So we've got a whole wall on the Westport Public School that's covered in chess trophies.
Wow.
And we would be coming back and putting them up there. But that being said, the trophies the trophies were never the reason for doing it. These kids did it, number one, because they loved it. Number two, because they loved the success of it. And number three, I think it made them feel good about the world and made them feel good about themselves and gave a sense of pride and belonging and that aspirational thing. I can be better if I put that effort into being better. And I think that's a huge message.
Now, while that particular cohort or all those cohorts have fractured now and that's not underway, there is a legacy that's gone out in the broader world. Just one example was a student who went on to study, was it diagnostic medical science and robotics?
Yes, she's currently in her second year and doing very well, and she's problem solving on a very, very real level. Within that group of chess players, I think there's a couple gone on to do law and some very high powered jobs. Some of them now are in their mid-20s and 30s. I've got a couple in their 30s. And I was out the front putting Christmas decorations out here one year, and the car went past and very slowly, and I went, oh, who's this? What's going on? Car pulled up out the front, and this kid got out. He was tall, and I've gone, this could be trouble. Well, he gets out and he says, Mr. Ainsworth, I saw you drive. I wanted to come and say thank you for what you did for me, because it changed my life in terms of how I saw myself as a successful student who could achieve anything I wanted to. And it was one of those times you don't really think about what you've done and how it's changed, or what, that doesn't hit you until then, if you know what I mean.
I think that's in the heart of the DNA of many teachers. I've spoken to many who've had that as well. How good that must feel. There's almost no other career out there where you get a chance to have such a formative role.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure other people, teachers and school personnel listening to this would have been like me, quite excited until we heard that when you moved away, there was a stress put on that process. But let's put that aside to one moment. If someone is interested in starting this up, what do they do? Do they find a chess club outside the school gate? Do they look for something internally? What would be your off-the-hip advice?
There's numerous ways to access it. Look, getting involved in a chess club, if you've got one near you, is great. Reading. I read a lot. Getting into this early on, I read a lot. There's so many books, and I know Chess World down in Melbourne, they have heaps of books. David Cordova's business down there does a lot of that stuff. You can buy chess books online. Get into the problem solving stuff. Like even I've got one of my go-to ones at school is a book called Pandolfini's Endgame, and it's a series of drills that the kids do. It's so easy. It's listed. The moves are listed for you. Any of that reading that is really easy. There's another book that's and I'm going off the title, not the author. It's called How to Beat My Dad at Chess.
Wow.
And that simply goes through this idea of let's start simply, let's learn the game from end game first and branch out. The big thing is reading, playing. If you can get into a chess club and get a mentor to help you, it's great. But the main thing is if you're trying to start your kids off at chess, if you have 2 turn up, that's great. Work with those 2, because I'll guarantee they'll go back and tell their classmates, this was really good. There might be a tournament in a week. Come and join us. We'll get out of school for a day. That get out of school for a day may be just the thing that turns them to say, hey, this is good. I'm actually learning something here. And before you know it, those kids are going to be pushing you too. But certainly reading, certainly finding someone who has that little bit of knowledge, a little bit better than you, always makes a difference. Lots of reading.
I just remembered sometime back when our girls were really small, sitting in a park. They were in a pusher. I was reading a book, just pushing the pusher back and forth. So I wasn't really totally engaged. If you were going to do this at the school, you can't really be like that. You've really got to be on the board too, don't you, in playing and loving it.
100%.
Yeah.
The kids need to sit. You can't just sit at your desk and be marking work. That's not coaching. Coaching is being over the boards, turning to a kid and saying, tell me why you made that decision. It's not do this. It's tell me why you made that decision. Are there any other options? Tell me your other options. The KM-PPS model, did you run that? Where did it break down? Coaching chess is teaching. Good teaching and good coaching are very, very similar roles. You can't just tell an athlete to play one. And this is another story. Our kids were very, very good at recognizing when someone was in a comfort zone. So they would play our kids would recognize this is the line they play. If we can take them outside of that comfort zone and disrupt their one line, we get more wins. So and that comes back into mathematics as well. It comes into everything. We can't just teach kids to answer a question or respond to a problem in one way. There has to be a multiple creative and critical thinking responses so that we can apply knowledge in a wide range. And I guess as a coach in chess, you've got to be prepared to ask how and why questions all the time.
There's a form of stoicism at work here, preparing yourself to have your line challenged and not lose your marbles.
And willing to be challenged as a teacher, to have a kid say to you, I think you're wrong, okay, and go, prove it to me.
Well, I think the world does need more resilience now. I really get that sense. This is my last question.
Yep.
AI, of course, is overtaking the world. It eats chess for breakfast. Some might say, why would I bother? Part of me thinks, you know what, learning chess skills and everything you've talked about with that framework from the school up is like a bastion against letting the brain atrophy and just handing it off to a virtual robot. What would your take be on this nexus between that and you pushing this, traditional ancient game as a way to access other things in life?
If computers can think creatively, there'd be no need for any of us. Computers can do critical, they can break a problem down, but can they come up with a creative response that may be out of left field, that no one ever thought of? Now, I read a bit of military history as well. General Patton once said to his staff, he said, "Gentlemen, if we're all thinking the same, then someone in this room has stopped thinking." I would say to anyone who thinks, well, the AI is taking over, well, yeah, it may be good for certain things, but it's not going to ever replace our ability to come up with creative solutions to difficult problems that come up in our everyday world. So that's where chess is going to help your kids. It's going to help you as a teacher. It's going to help your culture in your school, that ability to foster creativity in a very simple way.
Craig Ainsworth, thank you for sitting with me around the school table.
I enjoy talking about this stuff because I like seeing kids blossom into the kind of success that you would not dream of unless you've actually been part of it.
All right. We'll stop the recording. I'll get my set out. Black or white?
I'll play whatever you don't want. Good on you, Stephen. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.